Hey there, it's Russ, and welcome to another session of Financial Planning in Public. If you watched our prior installment, you met Lillian Lifestyle, and we talked a little bit about the people in her lives, mainly herself, and potentially planning for her granddaughter's college. We looked at her financial and non-financial accounts, assets, and liabilities, and we started to talk about, as you can see on the screen here, setting up her financial plan. We've got her income in here. We talked about her date of birth, her life expectancy. We've got her granddaughter in here. My fee is in here, as well as we also touched on the inflation rate assumption in the plan. That's important, by the way, because if we assume that, let's say she needs $50,000 per year to live on, well, in 5 or 10 years, it's going to cost more to buy what $50,000 buys today. And so we need to take into account the fact that things get more expensive over time. And so this rate of inflation assumption is going to permeate the plan and is going to impact a lot of our planning goals and other assumptions, which we'll, again, touch on in more detail as we go. So we've set up the initial plan. Let's move on and talk a little bit about what retirement looks like. So currently she's 61, she's working. Ideally, so this is kind of perfect world, aspirational. If she could do this, she's not counting on it, but if she could, she'd like to retire in a couple of years, as early as 63. But if in order to achieve other goals that are perhaps more important to her, she'd be willing to work to 68 or so. This estate value goal bears a little bit of explaining. So at the end of Lillian's life expectancy, which again, we're assuming at this point is age 95, at the end of her life expectancy, if we have met her goals, supported her lifestyle, allowed her to live the life that she has always dreamt of in retirement, as well as taking care of other people and organizations that are important to her, we can earmark that we want to leave a certain dollar amount to still be remaining at the end of her life expectancy. So in this example, we're saying ideally we'd like to leave $600,000 behind. That would leave $300,000 to each of her children, or she could direct those funds to go elsewhere if she so chooses. Now, again, I mentioned just a moment ago about the importance of inflation. So this is $600,000 in today's dollars. But if today Lillian is 61 and we're assuming she's going to live till she's 95, that's 34 years. So over the course of 34 years, this $600,000 it'll at least double. So it'll be well over $1.2 million. And in fact, it'll be much greater than that. But as I mentioned again on her retirement age, this estate goal is an ideal value. Her acceptable value is zero, meaning if she can take care of herself and fund her goals in the manner that she so chooses, and which I'll outline in a minute, she's okay if we don't leave anything behind. And as you'll see in a minute, some of the goals that she specified include providing for her children and grandchildren, as well as her church while she's living. So it doesn't have to be an either or. It's not take care of yourself and leave money behind if you can. There are ways we can approach this and do both. One of the key assumptions or variables in the plan is retirement spending. So again, ideally, she'd love to spend, and this is an after-tax figure, so you'll note it says net here. That means this is an actual spendable dollar amount. So this is after taxes have been paid. She'd love to spend $12,000 a month or $144,000 a year. That's ideally. On a more acceptable level, she would be willing to spend $76,000 a year, and that's about $6,300 a month. Based on her income, at this point, I'm going to assume that we don't have specific Social Security benefit estimates for Lillian. Again, she's divorced, so she is eligible for either her own benefits or half of her ex-husband's benefits, whichever is greater. But in this instance, we're just going to estimate Social Security benefits based on Lillian's income. So moving along, in addition to retirement, she has some other goals that she would love to figure out a way to include in her plan. So one of them, as I mentioned when I was talking about the estate planning goal, is annual gifting to children. So if she can, ideally, she would love to gift $25,000 per year to her two children. So that'd be $12,500 each. And we're looking at doing that from now until, I'm sorry, from Lillian's retirement until till she reaches age 80. And this amount will be adjusted by the inflation assumption, 2.4% per year. However, if she can't afford to do the 25,000, she would be willing to accept $10,000 a year as a gifting goal, even if she had to do it for a shorter period of time. So maybe from retirement till age 75. These recommended values I'll talk about a little bit more later. In addition to the annual gifting, she would love to take her family, her children, their spouses, grandchildren on a trip every 3 years or so. Ideally, she'd like to spend up to $30,000 on that from her retirement till her age 80. But an acceptable value of these family trips would, again, still be every 3 years, but it'd be $15,000 from her retirement up to age 75. In this instance, maybe she would cover the majority of the cost, and or maybe cover the lodging and meals, and everyone else would be responsible for their own transportation, flights, that kind of thing. Finally, church is very important to Lillian. She would love to be able to tithe $12,000 a year. That would be acceptable. She would like to do that starting at retirement through the end of her life, but an acceptable value would be about $5,000 a year from retirement to the end of her life. Again, each of these goals is going to be adjusted for inflation each and every year. And then finally, under goals, we've got some goals in here for Lucy, who is Lillian's granddaughter. So Lucy is currently 12 years old. So in about 6 years or so, she'll be likely going to college. So ideally, this is the cost. I'm going to edit this real quick and show you something. We can actually look up specific schools. Like myself, Lillian is an Auburn fan. So if we put in the cost of Auburn University, click that, you can see right here for in-state, it's $11,276 a year. Out of state, which would be the case here, because Lucy also lives in Georgia, like Lillian does, it would be $30,524 per year. That's tuition. So I've got $30,524 per year in here. However, an acceptable version might be to go to the University of Georgia, which would be an in-state tuition at a much lower cost. So this is for 4 years, the years when Lucy is 18, 19, 20, and 21. So 4 years of undergrad. We have these costs going up at the default rate of inflation. Something we might actually do, because college has been going up at a rate higher than inflation, is we can set a specific inflation or cost adjustment rate. So maybe we've moved that to, let's say, 5% per year, to more accurately reflect what we anticipate college costs might do over the next few years between now and the time that Lucy would begin school. We hit save, and that's where we are there. Finally, before I wrap up today's session, we need to consider investment risk. So my belief, and something I feel strongly about, is that if we can create a financial plan, a sustainable financial plan that allows Lillian, or would allow you, to live a great life, to do the things that you want to do in the manner that you would like to do them, why take any more risk than is necessary? So in my mind, our ideal risk level is the least amount of risk possible. In this example, it's portfolio F, which only has about 30% of the portfolio in diversified stocks. However, if we needed to take more risk to make the plan feasible and to make it sustainable over the remainder of Lillian's life expectancy, we might need to take a little bit more risk than the minimum. However, for someone that's in their early 60s, like Lillian, I'm assuming that she has no interest, nor do I have any interest, seeing her go up to the highest risk portfolio, which is 100% stocks. So in this example, Lillian and I discussed it, and we agreed that the maximum amount of investment risk she would be willing to take would be this portfolio D, which has about 60% of the portfolio in diversified stocks. So again, I know I'm going through this in a fair amount of detail, but I want to spend some time covering the inputs, because clearly there's the rule of garbage in, garbage out applies in financial planning as it does elsewhere. And so I want to be very thorough and explain to you the inputs and assumptions that we're using to build Lillian's plan. So this has been session 2 of Financial Planning in Public. Thanks for joining us, and I look forward to sharing more with you here very, very soon.